I actually forgot that this movie was coming up on the list. I really did. And I'm filming these a little bit out of order. I really didn't want to rewatch this movie again. But what's ironic is instead of rewatching this, I went and watched Invitation to Hell and Chiller, reviewed those. Those will be up along the schedule. And it wasn't much of a change because those movies were pretty bad as well. Although this one, so far, this is the worst theatrical Wes Craven movie. And I've said before, I want to keep these videos as positive as possible. I want to make this a video series of celebration of Wes Craven's career. I don't want to be too harsh on these movies. But Wes Craven even hates this movie. He said it plenty of times in interviews. He didn't like the movie. Nobody really working with the movie and working on the movie liked the movie either. So it's probably okay for me to say this movie stinks. And today's review is The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. And I did a review for The Hills of Eyes, and that's one of my favorite horror films out there. Not even just from Wes Craven, but I think just one of the best horror films from the 70s. It's one of my personal favorite horror films. This one is such a lackluster follow-up to Hills Have Eyes. It's got just a lot of things wrong with it. Now, I do think that Wes Craven's direction and cinematography, the way that he shoots this movie, I don't think that stuff is half bad. I really don't. I think there are certain scenes that are directed pretty decently. Maybe not flawlessly, but decently. And I think that the way the movie looks, as far as its darkness and the usage of lighting, isn't half bad. There are some scenes that I think are too dark. Like, the original Hills of Eyes did it in a way where it was creepy. This had moments of that, but it was mainly just not being able to see what the hell is going on half the time. And I did not rewatch this movie. I did not want to rewatch this movie, and that is why I did not rewatch this movie. So I'm going to be probably a little rusty on some things. But the plot, you have at the beginning of the movie, Bobby from the last movie, same actor, same character, is going to therapy talking about the events of the first movie. And of course we have flashbacks. And for some reason, I guess he's friends with Ruby. And Beast goes with Ruby. The dog Beast is in this movie, who should be dead, because in that movie it was a full-grown dog. Here it's still alive, running around and everything. And I'm like, how is this freaking dog still alive? But you got Beast in this movie, and everybody's having flashbacks at the beginning of this movie. Every single character is having a goddamn flashback, and it's because for certain reasons, and I'll get into that later, hopefully if I can remember to, which I'm pretty sure I will, because it's a big part of the making of this movie. But there's a lot of filler flashbacks at the beginning of this movie. Everybody's having a flashback. We got Bobby, we got Ruby, and we got Beast, the dog, having a flashback, which, yes, is very silly. And it's been mentioned plenty of times, and it's as ridiculous as it sounds. Ruby knows these people. I don't know how, but she knows these people who are not really like teenagers, but more younger adults. And they're all going on this trip out to the desert once again. For some reason, Ruby goes to face the fears, and Bobby, she's trying to get Bobby to go, and he doesn't. He's like, no, I'm not going. Smart move. Good move. Why these people are going out to the same goddamn desert where this disaster tragedy happened, where these people were murdered and cannibalized. Yes, they killed off all of the cannibals at the end of Hills of Eyes. That doesn't mean you go back out there It really doesn't. My mouth just made kind of a farting noise. You know, kind of what I think of when I think of this movie. But why they decided to go out to the same desert, even to the point to where it has Michael Berryman out there playing the same character. They had to get Michael Berryman back in this movie because they knew that having one cannibal who's named the Reaper, who I think is played by Kane Hodder, they knew that wasn't going to cut it. Having one cannibal, one character wasn't going to seal the deal. So they had to bring back Michael Berryman. Which, yes, I mean, it wasn't like he did a bad job acting. Was it okay? Like, as far as his new look goes, as far as it was cool seeing Michael Berryman come back, it was cool. I think his character was Pluto. It's cool seeing him come back. As a fan, it's cool seeing that. But logically, it doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely zero sense. The man had his throat ripped out at the ending of The Hills Have Eyes. He's dead, but somehow he's back in this movie. And these people go out to the desert and they are testing this fuel that they're trying to make for bikes. And while they're out there, they find out that the hills still have eyes, which should have been called, this movie should have been called that. I don't know why it wasn't. But it then becomes a slasher movie, just a basic, simple slasher movie. You have people being killed off by traps, and occasionally you'll see the Reaper. And they try to build him up and make him the next intimidating big villain. In reality, he's the most generic big guy villain you can think of. Nothing to this dude, nothing, no intimidation. The design of this character I didn't like. The makeup, the costume, I thought it was all just uninspired and just lackluster. These characters, they freaking suck. And I get it, if it's going for a slasher vibe, it's like, okay, if it's trying to be a slasher movie, why even care about the characters? But they're not even fun. Their acting isn't even so bad that it's laughable. It's just boring. And that's, I think, how I describe this movie. It's very, very horribly paced. There are scenes that drag out and out. The movie is like an hour and 26 minutes. Nearly almost half of that is just filler and flashbacks. I can guarantee that. Because to get into how this movie was made, Wes Craven didn't want to make this movie. He only did it to get the money for Nightmare on Elm Street, basically. And I believe he might have had a contract with the studio and they wanted another Hills of Eyes. He really didn't, so they just kind of wrote it and made it as fast as possible. And there was a lot of production issues. It actually was meant to come out way earlier in the 80s, but it got shelved until 1984. Where it was released before, or maybe during Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe to get some money for that. I don't know. I just know that this movie was pushed back, and it was released sometimes it's said that it released in 1985. So it depending on where you look at, it says 1982, 1985, 1984. Regardless, the movie was on a shelf for a long time, for good reason, and it was not even done. The movie, I think, was 50-something minutes long, and it wasn't even finished. It wasn't even a full-length movie, and they just decided to put extra stuff in there and pad it out, and you can definitely tell. It's just not as well written, it's not as well acted, it's not as well just inspired and creative. The original Hills of Eyes wasn't just some random slasher movie. It was a story about two families fighting each other, essentially. And one family, the more quote-unquote civilized family, having to go to the murderous route. And it was a very well-done story. There's nothing to this story. It's a slasher movie. It's a slasher movie that's not even fun as a slasher movie. The idea that there are these traps out in the desert, I don't know how these people are setting up traps. I don't know why the Reaper even needs to set up traps. This big, huge dude who you barely see, and all he does is say, "Ruby, Ruby." That's all he does. And the makeup sucks. And the character sucks. And the fact that they tried to make him the new Papa Jupiter, the new big baddie, is freaking ridiculous, man. I mean, this movie's just, it is ridiculous. You have a blind chick beating up one of the cannibals, Michael Berryman, beating him up. You got just her act like a psychic for no reason. You've got a pace that's so slow. It's so boring. It's just, it's like, that's why I didn't want to rewatch it again, because I do remember I did a review for it maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 at this point, but not too long ago. I did a review for this, the original, the remakes, and it's kind of weird because I would have never thought a sequel to a remake would be better than the original sequel. Because I really do like Hills of Ice 2, the remake. I think it's pretty fun. It's not as good as the other ones, but it's really fun. This one, it could have been fun. I don't mind the poster. I mean, look at it right here. It's not a bad looking poster. The blue and the red with the fire. Okay, that's cool. And I do remember being not like a young kid, but being younger. And somebody had this movie. I think I was visiting somebody and they had this movie. And I was going to watch it, but the DVD was so scratched and so just unreadable it didn't even play. So I couldn't even watch this movie when I first found it. And for a long time, I forgot it was a sequel. I didn't even realize Hills of Ice had a sequel, the original. I thought it was just part 1. And then I was on Netflix one day and this popped up and I was like, what the hell? There's a sequel? And you got Michael Berryman coming back in this movie for no reason. Absolutely no reason. He gets killed off again in a very similar way. It just, you don't have any good dialogue from these villains. The villains, you barely see them most of the movie. It's trying to be like Wrong Turn 3, and both these movies suck because just having the characters run around and there's traps is lazy. And it doesn't even feel like a Hills of Ice movie. It feels like a generic, run-of-the-mill slasher movie. And it's just, it's nothing. It's nothing special. It's nothing interesting. It's very, very boring, very, very slow. I believe there's a Blu-ray, dare I say even a 4K of this movie, which to me is completely shocking. And there are movies out there that don't even have DVDs. But Hills of Ice Part 2 has a Blu-ray. Why? Why does it have a Blu-ray? Nobody wanted a Blu-ray. I didn't want a Blu-ray. Did you want a Blu-ray? No, I didn't think so. But it's a missed opportunity because you really could make a pretty good sequel to Hills of Ice. And Hills of Ice could be a franchise. It has potential. It's just weird because Hills of Ice, for as much potential as it has as a franchise, it could never get that ball rolling. Like, both part 2s didn't do very well, and it just kind of fell flat right there. Which is just kind of, I think what it was, just this movie was probably a combination of poor marketing, poor timing, and just uninterest. I mean, there was no reason, there was no need for a sequel, there was no desire for it. And yeah, I just really don't like this movie. It's just, to me, it's lazy, it's uninspired, it's boring, it's lukewarm, it's nothing. It's just, it's fairy dust. It doesn't exist. You know, it's a fugazi, man, fugazi. But I don't know. That's just Hills of Ice Part 2. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. I want to move on past this movie. There are other movies on this list that I think are better. I want to talk about more, but yeah, Hills of Ice Part 2, nothing unique, nothing special, and it just doesn't stick out at all, and it's just, nobody likes it. Wes Craven doesn't like it, and everybody on board didn't like it, the actors, the people making it. Really, it was a movie that really shouldn't have been made, and it bombed, at least I think it did. Let me check real quick before I say something like that, but it bombed. Like, no, it was a big hit financially. made like $1 billion. No, I know for a fact it didn't make no $1 billion. This movie cost $700,000. They cheaped out on this sequel. They didn't even give it $1 million. It doesn't even tell me how much it made back. Probably means it was a bomb. But yeah, Hills of Ice Part 2, 2 out of 5 for me. If you've seen the movie, comment down below your guys' thoughts on it. I am pretty curious to see what you guys think about Hills of Ice Part 2. But anyways, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, I got all that in the description below. But anyways, y'all, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and the Explorer of Horror is out. See you guys later. Peace.